and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today on the show, we have Priti Golechha. She's a healthcare physician executive, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Lifelong Learning Through Skillful Self-Reflection. Priti, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you and with your audience.
So we'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and your journey to where you are today?
So I'm a pediatrician and I've turned into a healthcare executive. I am a strong gender equality advocate. I finished my med school in India and I immigrated to US to actually escape patriarchy and a surgical field I was kind of pressured to get into and pursue my lifelong dream of becoming a pediatrician. And when I got here, I realized there's no escape from patriarchy. There is no, we are far from gender equality. And I had to speak for myself and I have to speak for others who would follow me. And within 2 years of my practice as a pediatrician, I saw that there were very few, or I barely saw anyone like me in the healthcare executive or C-suites. And that's when I decided that I had to switch my career again, and I wanted to get into leadership and actually advocate for women physicians to get a seat at the table. And now my day job is as Associate Chief Medical Officer for a nonprofit organization in California. And I also founded Physician Women in Leadership organization to actually pull other women in leadership through mutual coaching and learning.
Now tell me a little bit about that transition from a clinical medicine role into the C-suite. How difficult was it for you? And did you have any additional training to make that transition?
Actually, I didn't have any training and I was really raw. I was just 1.5 years out of residency and position opened up for regional medical director. And I actually went into leadership to fix everything. I was like, there are so many things which don't work well. There are no women in the leadership. I'm going to go and change that overnight. And that's the mentality I went in. And I think as a clinician, that's how we are taught in med school and residency. Like we are very focused on the problems and we want to go and I'm a fixer by nature. And that's what my initial thought process was when I went into leadership. So it was pretty rough. The first 1 year was really rough. And I was glad I found some good mentors and coaches. It really helped me with the transition.
So now you've been a physician executive for a little bit now. Is it what you thought it would be?
Absolutely not. Again, I really thought I'm going to go and fix everything. As I started growing up and, started climbing the ladder, I realized it's more about asking right questions, asking lots of questions actually, and just influencing your team and hoping they'll get there. And sometimes they won't, and that's okay too, because again, your team, your directors, they're going to work, they're going to learn from their mistakes and they're not going to learn from your mistakes. So I like it, but it's very different than I imagined it would be.
Now for other women physicians who are interested in making that transition from a clinical role and into leadership, can you share some tips from your own journey that you could share with my audience?
One thing I realize is people, and this is a common observation, and I think there's a lot of research about that too. People like to hire people who look like them, who are like them. And if we just waited and sat for an opportunity to come, it might never happen. And as a physician, especially a women physician and women of color, we have to be more proactive and go and apply. And a lot of us, being physicians, we get a lot of training and we feel once I am ready, I'll apply and I have to get some training. I don't think that's the right way of doing it. You just see an opportunity and you apply and you learn on the way. Like leadership is building a plane while flying it, and you find right coaches and you find right mentors and you learn while you are on it. So don't wait for an opportunity, just apply, ask for help, ask for mentors, ask for coaches. Let your CV reflect your experience in whatever you might have done in the committee role or anything with leadership, or even your interests. Like, hey, I really am seeking a position in leadership. because I feel a lot of women, I speak to a lot of women through my work in Physician Women in Leadership Group, and they're really able and they have great CVs, and there's just that feeling of, oh, I'm not ready yet. And I just feel we have to push ourselves and apply and see what happens. And that's okay if we fail, apply next time again.
So let's transition now into your Kevin MD article, Lifelong Learning Through Skillful Self-Reflection. Now, for those who haven't read that article, can you just walk my audience through it and maybe share the story of why you decided to write it?
So I write a lot of articles, and I write my experience as a woman of color in healthcare executive role, because I feel there are very few of us there. And when I started my journey, I couldn't relate to other leaders. I didn't feel they were like me. Even if they had great advice, I didn't feel that I could rock that advice really well. It didn't feel authentic. And that's when I started writing blogs about my experience as a woman. And I wrote another article for you, Kevin. So just putting all my thoughts together as how I am learning on my journey, and hoping that it would inspire other women leaders or other leaders even, or people of color, to get into leadership and learn from my mistakes a little bit and then make their own mistakes.
What do you consider skillful self-reflection?
Initially, when I started my leadership role, I was really looking for resources outside. And there are great resources, and I do attend a lot of conferences and courses.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel unless I sit down and reflect and really spend time with myself, thinking about my experience or my difficult conversations, all those resources are not going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
After every difficult conversation as a leader, and I had many, I spent 10 minutes with myself just for self-reflection,
Mm-hmm.
and wrote down what went well, what didn't go well, what is one thing I would like to do differently, what is one thing which went well, what were my triggers, and how I could make the conversation better next time. And those 10 minutes have really paid off well. And then I started practicing with my coach for my next conversation. Hey, this is what happens with me. Like if somebody said something, I get defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And these are my triggers. And we started practicing, and I started doing a lot of self-reflection after every difficult conversation. And it started getting better and better. It started becoming quick and fast. Now I know my triggers right away. I know how I react, and sometimes I still react, and that's okay. But at least I know, oh, this is happening now, and I'm going to react, and then the next conversation is going to be better. So I feel like leadership is a lot of self-reflection and self-learning and self-coaching, and not just outside resources. And you read about leadership, like it's not like medicine, and you read about a Krebs cycle, and now you know the Krebs
Mm-hmm.
cycle, and you can answer all the questions.
Now, we have a lot of clinicians who listen to this podcast, and of course, we have difficult conversations in the exam room every day. Now, how can we apply some of these self-reflection techniques to these difficult conversations that we have in the exam room?
I have used the same skills with my patients as well. It's really crucial to have empathetic learning skills, even if I
Mm-hmm.
don't relate with my patients sometimes, especially with some of the values might not align. I'm a pediatrician by training, and I'm a strong vaccine advocate. And sometimes there are patients who might not align with my values, and they might not believe in science or believe in vaccines, and it gets really tricky. But what I have learned is if I spend enough time talking to them and listening to them, they might or might not agree with me this time, but at least I have created that first seed into the sand, into the ground, to have them come back and talk to me about this again. So a lot of listening, and not reacting right away. So that has really helped me.
We're talking to Priti Golechha. She's a physician executive, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Lifelong Learning Through Skillful Self-Reflection. Now, as a physician executive, one of the reasons you said you wanted this role was because you wanted to change the system. Now that you are a physician executive, has that happened? Have you made the changes you wanted?
I think we are getting there, and honestly, it's not. I don't think it's a destination; it's a journey, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just glad to be on this journey. And I'm making the changes, and I'm glad I'm advocating for other women, and I'm advocating for our patients, and I'm advocating for the things which I feel are right for healthcare system overall. But it's not going to happen overnight, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of that. It's just a journey, and I'm glad we are on the right direction.
And what's something that you know now that you wish you knew back before you made that journey to become a physician executive?
I think I needed to worry a lot less about what people think about me.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as my behavior is aligned with my values and I know I'm doing the right thing, I didn't have to worry about what people would say or how people are perceiving me. I don't think humility and assertiveness or strength are counterintuitive. And I can easily rock both of them.
And my final question, what's your take-home message that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
I would say strive for excellence and do the right thing. You'll get love for it and you'll get hate for it. But as long as you're aligned with your values, do it anyways.
Priti, thank you so much for sharing your story and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Kevin.